Hi guys, welcome to Love, Sex and Magic. I'm your host, Mel Wells, and today I am joined with my favourite person in the world, Mr. Rick William.
It's good to be here.
These are my favourite podcast episodes, the ones that we do together.
A lot of fun.
So today we're going to talk all about plant medicine, psychedelics, ayahuasca, healing, all of the things, especially because we recently had a week at Soltara Healing Center, which is one of the ayahuasca retreat centers here in Costa Rica, which was amazing. So we're going to share all about that, but also just really about our experience with plant medicine in general, why we are big supporters of it, how it came to become a part of our worlds. And we've also got loads of questions that have been submitted to us by you guys from both of our communities on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting dug into this episode, babe.
Yeah, well, you were really passionate about the world of plant medicine, and you had not a lot of experience, but you had some experience before we met 4 years ago. So why don't we start there? How did it come into your world?
It's a great question. So it came into my world when I was about 19. I think I've spoke about this on the other podcast episode for everyone that's listened to that. I had a bunch of issues with drugs in my kind of teenage years. I kind of had this experience with LSD, which completely transformed my life and took me from, having this drug addiction to completely turning my life around. In my early 20s, I then built a business and kind of got my life in shape. They came into my life, to cut a long story short, at age 19. And I had this really transformative experience. And that just stuck with me. But I didn't know anything about psychedelics at that point. They weren't popular online. MAPS wasn't, there. All of the kind of psychedelic research wasn't there. So I just had this experience and wasn't able to piece it together until later on in my 20s.
Can I just interrupt with a question? Because I don't understand about what I just want to confirm. LSD, that's not a plant, right?
No,
that's a psychedelic. So
yeah.
Can you explain the difference for me and for everyone listening, the difference between psychedelics and plant medicine?
So plant medicine are the psychedelics that exist within the plant kingdom. So they're naturally occurring psychoactive substances which have these deeply profound healing experiences for human beings, as well as other mammals, to note. We are not the only mammals that use psychedelics, which is quite interesting. So,
do you want to go into that some more?
I think that'll sidetrack us too much, but basically you can look up psychedelics in other mammals and you find out that there's a whole book written on the psychedelic use within the mammalian kingdom. If you're into that type of stuff, you can go look that up. But I think that will sidetrack us too much from where we want to go today.
So I don't have any experience with psychedelics that are not plant medicine. So are all psychedelics healing or just plant medicine psychedelics?
Well, there is research on both LSD and MDMA, which are effectively synthetic, and they do show to have some healing efficacy in the trials. However, for me, I prefer those that are occurring naturally within the plant kingdom. And I heard a metaphor from Terence McKenna, who was a botanist and a psychedelic researcher for many years. Many people might be aware of him and his brother Dennis as well, who is associated, as it happens, with Soltara. So he said that the LSD is effectively like a young buck, in that if you take too much, it can literally shoot you off into the moon. And whereas the plant medicines have this ancient old wisdom within them, almost like an old grandfather or grandmother, where they tend to take you to exactly where you need to be. And that's certainly been my experience with the plant medicine. They seem to give me the healing that I need. Whereas with LSD, sometimes it feels like, I don't know, it has this kind of synthetic feel to it. It doesn't feel like it's guided. It doesn't feel as sacred.
Yeah.
There's just something else about it that's a little more kind of void, robotic.
Yeah.
I know, it just has a very
Less
different
sacred.
energy.
Yeah, and actually, now you've mentioned MDMA, I have taken MDMA before, just in a party setting, but it wasn't, I wouldn't describe it as like a safe kind of sacred ancient wisdom type experience at all. So it definitely feels as though the plant medicine is, I mean, for me it just makes so much sense that God, the universe, created these ancient tools and medicines within nature, within the jungle, that can help us heal. Of course, like, it makes complete sense. Like, why would God not have put all of the answers completely in nature, exactly where we need them? It's just like, it blows my mind how like everything we need is in nature. Food, medicine, freaking everything. You know, we just massively complicate things by like making it illegal, or like, you know, saying no, let's ban natural healing, and like let's put everything into a pill, and you know, we know better than Mother Nature herself. Anyway, let's get back onto plant medicine.
I think it's all relevant. I think what you're saying is so relevant.
So that's how you first got into it.
That's how I first got into it. Yeah.
And you'd taken ayahuasca once before we met?
I'd taken ayahuasca once before we'd met. I think I was about 25. I was running my business at that time in Newcastle. And that's when I went to Amsterdam and had my first ayahuasca experience, 25. For context, I'm now 32.
Yeah. And that was life-changing as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
What happened?
I got rid of my business.
Oh yes, that was when you got rid of your business. So would you say that plant medicine was like the catalyst that made you do that made you make that decision?
I don't want people to ever think that plant medicine is the sole catalyst for anything, because I don't think it is a panacea. However, I was already searching for, like, I was already meditating, I was already doing my own growth work, which led me to plant medicine, which then helped me answer the current problems that I was challenged with at that time. So it unlocked what I was already searching for. Like, I sensed there was something not right in my life. I'm in Newcastle. You know, I have a penthouse. I have, you know, notoriety where I live. I have notoriety in my industry. And there's a part of me that felt empty. And I'm like, this isn't it. Like, what am I missing? And I went with that intention to show me, like, what am I missing? What's missing in my life right now? And that's what was revealed. It was like, you need to move on from this. And it just gave me, because the process with the medicine can be such a surrendering process, it allowed me to almost like purge out everything I was holding on to, so that I could move on to this new life I was longing to build.
Wow, that's awesome.
Let's talk about your journey. How did you get into plant medicine?
I actually don't think I knew anything about it until I met you. I don't think I had even heard of it until we met 4 years ago, and you spoke about it. And I think at the beginning I was like, that sounds interesting, but I didn't really understand why. I thought it was the same thing as drugs. Like, I had not really done any research, so I didn't understand like the importance and the healing benefits of it. I think I just thought of psychedelics as like something from the 70s, and like, I don't know, right? Something that people do at parties that I'm not interested in. And and then I think from speaking to you about ayahuasca, and I think it just kept coming into my awareness, and I hear that a lot from women in my community and people that are interested in having their first experience. They'll say, it's just suddenly coming into my awareness more and more and more. Like, it's suddenly calling me more and more and more. So when it first started calling me, I think it was when I was living in Bali, I want to say like maybe 3 years ago. And suddenly I was like, oh, I'm really feeling called to do this. And then we had the opportunity to go to Ruthmere, which was my first plant medicine experience, which is about a year ago.
It wasn't your first plant medicine experience, though, just to...
Sorry, not my first plant medicine experience, my first ayahuasca experience. Before that, I had had really positive mushroom experiences, that's psilocybin, in Bali, in Lombok, which always felt just so cosmic, so beautiful, felt so connected, felt like I connected with God, felt like I, stopped being afraid of death. Like, it was honestly just the most magical experience. And I was like, well, if ayahuasca is anything like this, I'm going to have a great time. It's going to be amazing. So I'd had really positive mushroom experiences before I took ayahuasca, which I think is important. And I think if you can do that, I think it's good to do that, because it means that you're practicing that surrender. You're practicing that like trust in the plants, instead of like trying to control every single thing, which is, you know, obviously taking plant medicine and being in these kind of ceremonies for your healing, you do have to surrender to the medicine.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there is something great about having a mushroom ceremony before you actually go take ayahuasca. Not for everyone, but I know that for me, it's been able to help me navigate the more challenging aspects of the ayahuasca world. So I've also found that really helpful.
Yeah. So I think we should get into like the big life changes that we've both experienced since we started exploring plant medicine. So I know that by the way, guys, we've both had such different experiences in our plant medicine journeys, right? So why don't you, in summary, share like how your journeys have been and some of the big breakthroughs in healing that you've experienced, and then I'll do the same.
Where do you begin with that? That's especially.
I know that's what people want to know the most, you know. So I'm like, let's just give them the juice.
It is what people want to know, but it's like I just want to give the context. Like my experience and Mel's experience is relevant for her, and sometimes the way that the medicine works can be in quite abstract ways, which is perfectly relevant for that person that is going through it.
Totally.
And often what many of the teachers say is that the medicine gives you what you want. No, the medicine definitely doesn't give you what you want. The medicine gives you what you need, not what you want. I have some resistance in giving my personal context, because I don't want to create expectations.
Well, that's why I'll share
people.
mine as well.
Okay.
Because they're so vastly different.
Okay.
I think people should get both.
Right. But just literally take whatever we say with a pinch of salt and just fucking let it go.
Yeah, because you'll get what you need,
Yeah.
and it will be probably nothing like either of our experiences.
Yeah, my experiences have taken me to like what feels like the depths of hell, like super dark and deeply challenging, like demons and fire, and just like the feeling of like deep shame and pain, and just like the depths of what might be considered a personal hell. It's like taken me there. It's taken me to places where I was just in a void, in the vastness of the universe, just cold and in a void, just like floating in space. Life had no meaning, and yeah, that was awful. And I was there for what felt like eternity, which is one of the medicine's lessons about teaching me about meaning and purpose. And then in that instance, for example, she would then show me the opposite. She would always, the way that she's been teaching me has been through contrast. So she would, for example, take me to that place of meaninglessness imagine just being in a void in the universe. And she was actually showing me just meaningless art, just over and over and over again. And I was just like, please stop. Like I was like wanting to like rip my eyes out. And eventually I was able to, again, just like come into presence with it, just accept it for what it was in the moment, and say, I'll be with whatever is here. And she was showing me like how I was showing up in the world. Like this was a reflection of some of the things that I was participating in my own life. And then when I was able to sit with that and have that realization, then at that point, like she just opened up the opposite. Like she just showed me deep meaning and like the beauty of the cosmos. And then I would have that experience. So it would be like I ended that ceremony with like, wow, like it really is a choice between the two, and it's like a no-brainer, you know. It's like I want to go in that room, you know. So that was a cool experience, albeit very challenging at first, which is how most of my ceremonies tend to start, right? Other interesting things is that the medicine on several occasions has turned me into an animal.
Oh my God, this is the best. Oh my God, I love this.
Yeah, and it took me a long, even just to speak about it now, it took me a long time just to accept it, because it kind of felt like I was given a gift. And it took me a long time
It's definitely a gift, babe.
it took me a long time to accept it and to like allow it in. But yeah, in one of my journeys, which started last year, I was laid in bed. Initially I was a baby, and I was in a crib, and I was in a cot, and I didn't have the love that I needed. And I was shouting out for help, and nothing was happening. And then the medicine said, you need to learn to love yourself, which is like a typical medicine lesson, right? Typical life lesson. But what was happening again in that moment is I was given the opportunity, most likely going back to an early memory of me being in a cot and just being left. And this was obviously, I'm assuming, some fragment that was inside of me. So anyway, she was showing me just to love myself. And then as I did, this took a while, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. As I eventually like figured it out and was able to stay with it and love myself, my hands turned from like baby hands in a cot to these like claws. And I was like, what the fuck? And I remember like moving my tongue around my teeth, and it felt like I had like sharp teeth. And I was like, whoa, this is so strange. And then I go to make a noise, and the next noise I make is a noise that I've never ever made before. And it was like the noise of like a cat. And then it was like, the next thing I know, I remember the shaman come up, and she was like, shh, baby jaguar. And I was like, fuck. And then for the rest of the ceremony, I was just like in this kind of world where I was just like running around the Maloka and just like kind of protecting it.
As a jaguar.
As a jaguar.
Yeah. Literally on all fours. Rick, I've never seen your body move like that. I've never seen any human move like that. It was literally like you were not a human. You were a jaguar.
It's
not just that one ceremony. You've had this jaguar has come through you like 4 times now?
Maybe
4 different ceremonies, maybe more?
2, yeah.
So it's like this animal, this spirit of the jaguar is trying to just teach you something and work with you consistently, which is so incredible.
Yeah, and the lesson with it each time is deepened. You know, because at first I was just excited about it. I was like, whoa, what does this mean? And then as it's progressed, the lessons that animal was trying to teach me has deepened.
What do you think those lessons are?
Well, a lot of them are about like loving power and like
loving power.
Yeah. Like how to be in that kind of loving protector energy whilst also like deeply connected to the earth and myself. And it's like, it's not a conceptual idea for me anymore. It's like it came into my body and like I was like living it as like a lived experience. And now that memory is like, has stuck with me.
Wow.
It stays with me. It's like that animal is now like a part of me, and I feel much more connected to nature, you know. And even when I'm playing with my dog, it sometimes comes out.
Yeah. And you've also had an experience with ayahuasca where can you share where you felt like you were healing ancestral lines of abuse? And
oh yeah, that was quite interesting. That was in a place called Reyes del Sol in Costa Rica with Taino Juanito and his team. And yeah, I went in with the intention to heal ancestral pain, to like heal, like that's a part of my work, is to both heal my trauma in this life and any of the trauma that's being carried through the ancestral line. Now, to anyone, if that seems abstract, in a very simple way of explaining it, if you imagine that you have come from your mum and dad, and they both carry genes, which we all know about, and you inherit their genetics, but you're also inheriting their belief systems, their structures, their pain, because it's all passed down through the nervous system. And the leading researchers on mental health all know and understand that now, as well as picking up their internal working model, their attachment styles. You're like literally picking up on everything, on all of it. You're like a sponge. So the opportunity with any of our healing work, whether it be with ayahuasca or anything else, is that we get the opportunity to heal our own wounds, but also heal the wounds that have been passed down through time. So I went into this specific ceremony with that intention, like I really want to clear some of this stuff up that's gone deep beyond my own trauma and into my ancestors.
And it's not just doing it for you, right? It's doing it so that then you're not then passing it down to everyone that comes after you.
Exactly.
As well. You're like literally being a complete change maker in the whole family lineage.
that's the goal. So yeah, went into that ceremony with that intention, and there's a part of the ceremony where there is a healing done with a type of nettle. That's the easiest way of explaining it. And you sit there and you have your shirt off and you kind of like gently touch with this nettle, but it has a slight, there's a sensation to it. And as that nettle kind of like hit my skin, I just had this vision of multiple lifetimes of being whipped, of being like chained, and I saw myself in like Egyptian times, Roman times, and it was just like it was almost, what are those dolls called?
Oh yeah, what are they called?
Russian dolls.
Russian dolls.
The Russian dolls. Yeah, the Russian dolls where you like, you undo one and it's like,
Yeah.
it just goes on and on and on and on. It was like that, but I just saw through time. And yeah, in that moment, I just remember I remember just thinking, I was like, fuck this, like no more. And I stood up, I didn't say no more to the healers at the time, but like energetically, I was like, no more. And in that moment, strangely, I completely like passed out. I was like, it felt like I died. And actually in this moment, strange as this might seem to anyone listening, is like I completely defecated. Like my full body released, like my everything, like urine, shit, the whole lot was just gone. And I'm just like out of it for maybe 2 hours. And the next thing I know, I wake up and I'm like, they've like put me in the toilet and I'm just like sat on the toilet, and the amazing healers were there, and they were just like, this happens to us all at a point in ceremony. It's all good, Rick. Like, this is a part of your healing, brother. And it was just such a, like the people that were there at the time, like they just said exactly what I needed to hear and helped me come back to myself. And yeah, I just felt so deeply liberated. Like stuff in my gut had changed. It was like whatever that was that I'd been carrying was just like.
Because you've always had like gut issues, haven't
you?
you?
I had a lot of gut issues. My just general nervous system, because of stuff that happened in childhood, I've always been quite, I'm like a highly tuned surveillance system. Always like on the lookout for danger. So there's, my nervous system has always been ramped up, and it felt like this experience was just a release of that and a letting go of sorts. But yeah.
And I've definitely noticed, like in the time that we've been together, how much you've healed and grown. And I know a lot of that is your own personal work and different, ways in which you work on yourself every day, and the practices that you do every day, and the different mentors and courses and coaches and things that you're constantly investing in. So it's hard to know like what came from plant medicine and what came from just being, like living the work, right? But I definitely have noticed a huge change in your nervous system and in your, just how calm you are and how like zen you are, and just how, I think you've healed a lot since we first got together. You're like, there's so many things. I mean, I don't know if we want to go into that now, but there's just been big changes.
Yeah, there really has. And I think you touched on a good point there, which I think in the West, right, we tend to have this way of thinking that there's like a magic bullet or a magic pill. And I think that comes from the way that we've all been taught around consumerism, because everyone's like, I've got the best product, all you need is this, and it solves your problem.
So true.
So like we've been conditioned with that, with that kind of cultural story. And I think it's quite immature in a sense. And I think that's what we're beginning to grow out of now. And seeing that, yes, ayahuasca plant medicine is one of the healing tools, and it's amazing. Like, it's beautiful, amazing. It ticks so many of the boxes in terms of how it works. If you like link into how like all of the best healing modalities work, it like, if you go to a good sensor and you work with a good healer and it's safe, etc., it can literally tick like so many of the boxes. It like does a lot. But it's not a magic bullet, like you do have to come back into your life. You do have to have, fresh supportive friendships, supportive partners, coaches, maybe therapists. Like
your lifestyle needs to support that. If you're deciding to be on a spiritual path and you're deciding that you want more meaning, you want more purpose, then, you know, yes, going and doing an ayahuasca retreat will probably completely pivot your life and change everything. But then it's what you do afterwards to support that, because you're not the same person when you go back to your normal life,
Not
right?
at all.
And if you just go back into that life and you are still going out every weekend drinking, hanging around people that don't support you, still, you know, going back to that job that you hate, and you're living a life that is going against your path, then, you know, you're not going to get the benefits of ayahuasca, because you're not actually listening to it, and you're not creating the environment around you to support your integration work.
So it's such a good point. Yeah, as you say, you've got to support everything that you learn in your journey. If you don't go back and change the things that came up, then it's not like the medicine. It's not going to like mother you and usher you into a whole new life. It's like it can show you the way.
Totally.
And then you have to
It's like going on like a healthy retreat somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, you'll learn all this great stuff about food and how to take care of your body, but then if you just go straight back into your old life and you don't apply anything, then you're not going to grow, you're not going to move forward. Exactly.
No one will go on a fitness weekend for like 2 days, 3 days, or even a week, and then come back and be like, I'm fit. You know? No one would do that.
That's so funny. That's all they need to do. I'm now fit.
Yeah.
But I think this is one of the misconceptions that I think people have, and one that I had about ayahuasca. I thought you do it once in your whole life, that's it. You do it once, it figures you out for you, and then that's it. And, you know, I used to actually have some judgment when I would hear people say, oh, I've done 10 ceremonies, or I've, you know, done like 100 ceremonies. I'd be like, why? Did you not get what you needed the first time? You know, that's honestly what I thought. And now I really get it, because it's like, you build a relationship with the medicine, just like you build a relationship with exercising, or you build a relationship with meditation. And, you know, I'm not saying that you should do ayahuasca every day, absolutely not, but because it does alter your life so much. But it is something that, you know, I personally believe is not like just a once in a lifetime thing, but especially if you're someone on a spiritual path and you are evolving and you really are growing a lot and healing a lot, and you want to like literally live the absolute maximum potential of your human life, then I do think it's something that you grow with and learn with, almost like learning from a teacher, learning from a student. You learn, you get the tools, you get the breakthroughs, then you go back to your normal life, you integrate, you change your life, you grow, you up level. And then when you feel ready for the next lesson, or the next, you know, lesson from the teacher, then you get called back again, and you go back for another, like, right, time to go again, right?
And that's a great way to look at it, like you would a great teacher, or anything like that. I do think that's right. I think you build a relationship with it, and that's certainly been my experience. It's like unfolded over time. So let's talk about your experience.
My experience, oh wow, my experience has been very different to yours. So it's important that I think everyone gets this, because I listened to loads of YouTube stuff on the internet about ayahuasca, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna speak to God, I'm gonna go to hell, I'm gonna go to heaven, it's gonna be the best experience of my life. I had these really high expectations, and because I'd had like really powerful mushroom journeys, I thought it was going to be like that, but like 10x, you know. And the very first time that I went to take ayahuasca, which was at Rhythmia, we did a week at Rhythmia, I had a really awful experience because I felt nothing, and I was devastated, and I was so upset. And this was like there was 4 ceremonies that we had at Rhythmia, and there was, on the 3rd night, I had a really great, beautiful, powerful experience. But the other 3 nights, I had very fragments of things happen. Small fragments of things popped in, but because they didn't meet the expectations that I had the experience of like, oh my God, nothing happened, right? And I felt really upset. I felt really excluded from the group. I felt like I was being left behind. And I spent a lot of time feeling really upset, even though I was having an experience, like things were happening, like I did have certain things happen during the journeys, like I met different animals, I had an experience where I connected with my dad's spirit, that was on the third night. But this is really important, this goes back to what Rick was saying about the abstract teachings of the medicine work. I had this sense, which I didn't actually, it's only recently, guys, that I've actually really understood this lesson and really received the healing. I think when I first got back from Rhythmia, I didn't really understand what that had been for me, right? I just thought I didn't get as much as other people. So how can I put this? What I've realised now on reflection is what it brought up for me was this feeling of being left out, this feeling of being excluded, this feeling of being left behind from the group, which was actually one of my traumas from my childhood. It was being excluded from girl groups at school, being left out, feeling left out, left behind, excluded. And it was really painful for me in my childhood to go through that. And so what I now realize on reflection is the medicine was bringing up this feeling for me of being left out, of being excluded, which literally felt re-traumatizing for me. And I was so upset by it. And I know now that it was a trauma coming up because I was just so upset. I couldn't let it go. I was so upset by it. And it's because that was a trauma for me. And so what I realize now, a year later, is that I have completely healed that, because since that happened, I have never had the feeling of being left behind, of being excluded. It's literally just like evaporated from my system. It's like it doesn't trigger me anymore. It doesn't affect me anymore. So I know I know for sure that I have healed that trauma through ayahuasca, even though it was in an abstract way. It didn't show me in the ceremony, now we're healing this trauma. I didn't go back to any memories. That's not how it happened. It happened through, my reaction to not getting my expectations met through the ceremony. So that's the first thing that has been really powerful for me. The second thing was, I got back from that retreat and never went back to alcohol. And it's been a whole year since I've had any alcohol in my system, and I'm so proud of myself. And I didn't have a big alcohol problem by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't have like a rock bottom moment or anything like that. It was just like I just liked having wine when I went out to dinner with my girlfriends, just like everyone else in London does, go to somewhere like Soho House and just share a bottle of wine over dinner. It's just the done thing. It's just the kind of, I suppose it's quite glamorized in cities like London, and so it was normal for me to have a glass of wine with dinner. And since I got back from that retreat, I just never went back to it. And I just felt like any time that I'd tried to stop drinking before felt like a huge effort, and this time it was just like a decision in my body, and it was just like, yeah, no, I don't need that anymore. So I would definitely put a lot of that down to the medicine, like just helping me. And it wasn't my intention going into the ceremony. I didn't have the intention, help me give up alcohol. I didn't have that plan. In fact, I was more than happy to keep drinking. But I came back from that ceremony and didn't want to anymore. What else has happened? Oh gosh, so much. There was stuff around our sexuality, like our sex life, that changed when we got back from that ceremony. I hope that's not too personal to share, but we were exploring different things in our sex life before we went to that ayahuasca retreat that were a little more on the edgy side. And we came back from that retreat and neither of us had the interest in doing that anymore. It was the weirdest thing, which makes me feel like that desire to do those things that we wanted to do must have come from a trauma, must have come from a wounded place, because then we must have healed that to then come back. And it wasn't just me, it was, right?
Yeah.
But you actually had a journey where you went into sexual stuff.
I went into a really weird, a really strange world that was full of all of that.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of healing there. So it was coming from wounds within me. And as you say, through the journey, it just, you come back and just subtle things have changed. And a good thing to know about how somatic healing works, period, is that, you know, you can have a breathwork session or a somatic experience or a plant medicine experience. They're all somatic. But you don't always have to have the specific memory of what it's healing in order to heal. One of the leaders in the field is called Dr. Peter Levine, and he wrote a book called Waking the Tiger, and he invented somatic experiencing. And he talks about in his therapies is that with that experience, a lot of his patients will have an issue. It might be stress or anxiety, and then they kind of have this abstract vision, and then they might release the trauma. It might be through like a shaking or a tremoring or a screaming or a yawning, or there's all of these different ways that it can release itself and unblock the tension. And they may never actually be able to associate what that was in relation to.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because the fact is the body has released it, and then you are free.
That's really important. So yeah, going back to what I was sharing, that's exactly what happened for me. I didn't have like, you know, what I expected in these medicine experiences where I would have visions and memories and all this stuff. And yet I came back to my life and things shifted notably. You know, our love became deeper. Our sex life became more loving, less like hedonistic, say. And stopped drinking alcohol. We decided to move to Costa Rica. We sold everything that we had in London to decide to move out here. That was following a medicine experience. I also had a weekend with Taita Juanito where I had a really powerful experience where I literally became this like wild animal. Like I became like half woman, half animal, and it was like this real Kali like energy, and it felt quite dark, and I just became this animal all night, and I was like sticking my tongue out loads, and I just like what the experience of that was it was showing me how women over the years have become so domesticated, but when we really go back to who we have been all along, we're actually very wild. And so it was like reconnecting me to my wild, which was just so powerful and so interesting.
It was awesome to watch it. I was sat on a bed not too far away, and I'd kind of came around by that point, and I was just sat with a feather. And I remember we kind of crossed paths at one point, didn't we?
Yeah.
And you were just in this energy, and I was just like, this is so cool.
Yeah, he was just playing with his feather, and he like tamed me. I was this like beast, like this wild, ferocious creature, and Rick was just sat there playing with the feather.
No, I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared by it at all, because I'd been in like similar energies in my own way. So I was like, oh, she's just going through this thing. So I wasn't intimidated by it at all. So I was kind of just being a little bit playful and loving her. And
I became a little kitten.
Yeah.
When he
so
touched
funny.
me with the feather, I became a little kitten. I started purring.
It was so funny.
So that was amazing. And then at Soltara was the first time for me where I really felt like I was, oh gosh, every journey is so different, but I had a couple more experiences at Soltara where I felt like, oh, I don't really know if anything happened. It just felt like I was in this soup, like just in this drunken soup all night, and I don't think anything happened. So you do have experiences like that, you know, which is why I think it's good to do a retreat where you get like 4 nights or at least 2 nights, because you might have your first experience and you're like, I don't know what happened, nothing happened. That's not to say that no healings happened. It definitely will have done, and healing will definitely notably have changed when you notably will have happened when you go back to your normal life. But if it can be a little disheartening sometimes if you don't feel like anything happened in your ceremony. So at Soltara, I felt like I had my 3rd ceremony at Soltara was when I felt like I really started communicating with the medicine and like speaking to the medicine, and she was speaking back to me. Now this just reminded me, this is another trauma that I was able to heal, or that I did some healing around with plant medicine, because a lot of people say that the spirit of ayahuasca, Mother Ayahuasca, speaks to you during ceremonies, guides you, you know, communicates with you, shows you things. And I was having the experience before then of why doesn't she want to speak to me? She's not speaking to me. I don't understand. What have I done wrong? What's wrong with me? Which is exactly how I felt in childhood with some of my experiences at school, where I would show up to school and suddenly my best friend was not speaking to me. I didn't know what I'd done. Same with like an experience that I had at dance school. Suddenly I would like show up one day and I would have my friends there, and then another day I would show up and the girl that I'd been hanging out with was suddenly not speaking to me, and I didn't know what I'd done. So it was this confusion of like, why isn't she speaking to me? I'm so confused. What have I done? And it was the exact same thing that medicine was bringing up for me to heal. So again, another abstract healing for me. Anyway, at Soltara, I finally felt like this communication and guidance with medicine, which was really amazing. And yeah, it showed me flashes of past life stuff, flashes of future life stuff, and I'm trying to remember what was the last thing that happened on my last day. I had like a big breakthrough on my last day. I can't even remember what it was now. How crazy is that? I don't even know.
I can't remember your last day. That's the day I was. That was my challenging ceremony. I can't remember much from that day.
No, maybe it was my third day that was the big day.
Yeah, your third one was the one where we
Oh
celebrated.
yeah. I can't even remember. All I know is that every time we come back after an ayahuasca experience, our lives massively up level, our relationship gets even better, everything gets better.
Well, I want to caveat that with this time after Soltara, it took me, I had a really challenging experience on my last day, and I don't want to talk too much about this recent ceremony in terms of the details, because I'm still integrating a lot of them, so it still feels fresh. It doesn't feel quite right for me to fully dive into that just yet. But overall, it was an amazing experience. I learned so much and deepened so many lessons that I've been learning in life, with just understanding how to better love myself and how to integrate, true loving power. But on this last ceremony, I had just a very challenging experience, like very, very challenging. And it took me I actually finished ceremony. It was like 7 in the morning. I was still just coming back around, and it was all about just loving myself, because I just had this deep feeling of just loneliness and helplessness. And what the medicine was teaching me was how to be with that, and then how to alchemize that. But it took a long time. So like, I came out of ceremony, and for the week following, I was like, fuck, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get out of this. I felt like I was in a deep depression. I was like struggling some days just to like get through the day. And it wasn't until I accepted that, and I was like, well, if this is it, like, so be it. Like, I'll just work through it, just step by step, day by day. And I began opening up to some people. I had an integration coach, and I spoke to some friends, and I kind of revealed how I was feeling, and I just got so much support back. And for whatever happened, it just shifted. It just moved, and it was like something clicked within me. I was like, oh, I can reach out for support. Oh, I'm not lonely. And it was just something subtly clicked. And then from there, it's been a great two weeks. It was like 3 weeks ago now, and I'm like getting what the lesson was.
Yeah.
So I just want to the reason that I'm pointing that, sorry to cut you there, but the reason that I'm pointing that out is sometimes, like, I've come back from ceremony and felt amazing, but I just want to caveat that the way that the abstract way that the medicine can teach you sometimes doesn't always complete itself. Sometimes you have to go home and continue doing the work.
And that's actually a really good point, because we had really vivid dreams. We always have really vivid dreams for at least a week, 2 weeks after we come back, which is the medicine still in your system, working through things in your unconscious. I just wanted to talk about like a couple of other just different things that you might experience during ceremonies, which I have experienced. I had at one point a memory be brought forward into my mind, and this is something that I had completely forgotten about, completely buried, and it was my very first sexual experience. And if anyone had asked me, what was your first sexual experience, I would have said, with my boyfriend at school when I was 15. And this the medicine brought forward this memory and showed me that actually I had a different experience when I was much younger that was non-consensual, that I had literally completely forgotten about and like turned into a completely different thing and just locked it away in a cupboard. And it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was abusive or anything like that, but it was just something that happened in a weird situation where I completely forgot about it. And for whatever reason, the medicine needed me to see that. It needed to bring it forward. So that was really interesting for me. I also had different revelations come through about my dad, my stepdad, where I got to kind of experience life through their lens a little bit more. So yeah, there's so many different things that can happen. But that's just like an insight into both of our journeys and what they can feel like. And yeah, it's such a big variety. And at the same time, you might have an experience that's literally nothing like either of ours.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you sit around in the sharing circle at the ceremony, everyone just has a totally unique experience, and from that, like it's always just seems so relevant for whatever that person came to the medicine for. It always seems to make sense. Like sometimes I'm listening to other people's stories and they might share their intention and then they share their experience. I'm like, that makes so much sense. And I don't always say anything, but I'm always like, that makes sense. And just in terms of my own ceremonies, just like, a lot of my life I felt just deeply powerless because of things that happened in my early childhood and different assaults and stuff like that. And just this feeling of helplessness, a feeling of loneliness, a feeling of powerlessness. So a lot of my ceremonies are around healing that. And that's why, for example, the Jagiyo might come, because the Jagiyo is a symbol of power. And it's coming to me to teach me how to integrate that in a very loving way, as opposed to, a more kind of less effective way that I try to gain that power in my early 20s. So.
Yeah, and I've had 10 ceremonies now, and not once have I ever been to hell. Not once have I ever felt like I've had a death or a rebirth. Like, so, there's all these kind of things that we hear, but it's going to be completely what you need. Like, Rick, you've had so many deaths, so many rebirths. You've been to hell and back a million times. I've not had that in my ceremonies, right? You've, as you shared earlier, you have pissed yourself, shit yourself, all of it.
Danced in my own shit. That was a fun time. Everyone.
And I think women, especially listening to that, are going to be like terrified of doing that. And I just want to share, I think that's fairly rare. I've not seen it happen that much. And I've had 10 ceremonies and I've never pissed myself, never shit myself. However, vomiting is pretty normal. It's pretty normal to purge and vomit, but you get a bucket. You're not like vomiting all night. It's literally like, it doesn't feel like you're sick, does it? It just feels like something needs to come out of your system. It comes out, you continue. It doesn't feel like this kind of gross thing where you're covered in sick. That's not how it's like at all.
It's almost relieving once it's like, it feels like you're purging something up. And it
feels like just like having a sneeze or something.
The shitting yourself is more rare. But honestly, like it was so deeply liberating, like both of those experiences. Like if you can imagine dancing in your own shit and not caring about it, that's how liberated I felt in that moment. And I wasn't embarrassed about it. And all of the healers who've seen thousands of ceremonies, they've seen everything. They're like, everyone's just supportive of whatever's happening for you in that moment. That was obviously relevant for me, but don't worry about it. And if it does happen, it happens.
Totally.
Yeah.
So should we talk about like the actual like retreat? Because obviously we went to Soltara. A lot of people are probably thinking about having their first retreat experience. Do we think plant medicine is for everyone? Let's talk about that. Well, is it for everyone?
Why don't we, instead of us answering the questions, why don't we dive straight into the questions that have been asked from our Instagram? Because I think we're going to cover some of these.
Yeah, okay, great.
So you guys asked some great questions, by the way. The first one is from Kiki, and she said, for medical reasons, plant medicine isn't an option for me at the minute. Is there anything else you've done that has been really effective and helpful in your healing journey?
Breath work.
Yeah, breath work. breath work has been incredible, which again is a somatic experience. But also just finding safe and nurturing relationships and an environment that supports my growth in the life that I wish to live. So like surrounding yourself with people that are on the same journey as you, that understand your struggles, that are able to hold space for you and what you're going through, who can understand you.
Yeah, spiritual community.
Whether it be a spiritual community or just a trauma-informed community, or people on the
Therapy.
healing path, just whatever it might be. If you're on that journey, just like if you're into anything, if you're bang into surfing and you go try and talk about surfing to like your old friends who aren't into it, they're probably just going to give you like blank face,
Yeah.
Or they might try and be interested, but if they don't have a shared common interest, they're not going to be that into it.
Yeah.
So find people who are like-minded, who can support your journey.
Yeah, and seek out, therapy or a coach that's trauma-informed if that is what you are wanting to heal. Both Rick and I are trauma-informed coaches, and we facilitate healing trauma for our clients, and there's plenty more coaches and therapists who do the same. So I would definitely say any kind of somatic healing work you can find is fantastic. Plant medicine is a acceleration of that work.
Absolutely. And both of us incorporate the somatics into our coaching practice as well because of how effective it is.
Yeah.
But for me, a lot of the healing has come in my relationships, whether it be with my coaches, whether it be with my therapists. I can subtly sense how they have impacted my life in a very positive way outside of the medicine world. That has actually been a part of my healing, coming back into safe relationships. So that was a great question. I hope that helps, Kiki. Do you recommend any books or documentaries on plant medicine?
Oh my God, so many. So many. There's so many documentaries on plant medicine, I can't remember all of their names, but...
My two favorites, which I think you've seen as well, would be The Reality of Truth.
Yeah.
And then The Medicine, which is with the whole
that's the one
documentary
that we watched
Untitled.
recently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah.
And then, was there not one that we watched recently, Thrive 2? Was that about plant medicine? That was about a lot of different things, and just plant medicine was in there as well. I would look up Graham Hancock.
Yeah, Graham
work.
Hancock. Yeah.
I would look up Dr. Gabor Mate and his work on trauma and plant medicine and ayahuasca, and he's also associated with Soltara.
Yeah, and Graham Hancock's associated with rhythmia,
Right.
just as a reference.
Cool.
Um,
We'll talk about Soltara and rhythmia. Maybe we should do that next, because a few people asked, should I go to Soltara? Should I go to rhythmia?
yeah.
Both are such different experiences. Like,
Can we just pause for 1 second, because I have a book.
Sorry.
I have a book that I want to recommend for anyone going into plant medicine. Would be The Cosmic Serpent by Jeremy Narby. We both read that and
Such a good book.
absolutely loved it.
That's why I got this tattoo.
So that would be my book recommendation.
Great.
So thank you for that question, Sarah. And then,
Should we do Soltara versus rhythmia?
yeah, Soltara versus rhythmia.
Okay. So, first off, both incredible facilities, both amazing, both like top of the league if you're looking to book an ayahuasca retreat where you want to be fully immersed in the plant medicine world, then I would definitely look at both of them as options. I think depending on your personality, you're going to be better suited to one or the other. I would really say, having been to both, that rhythmia is more masculine and Soltara is more feminine. I would say rhythmia is a lot more intense. You are doing a lot more workshops. You have a lot more classroom style, school style stuff to do.
There's a lot more structure.
There's a lot more structure, exactly. And you're in a big group. You're in like a group of 100 people. Like loud music, dancing, lots of activities, and it's an intensive. It's like a plant medicine intensive, right?
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I think there's some parts that I really loved about my rhythmia experience, in that I loved the music. I loved that there was a fire that I could go out to and sit with. I loved that I could go out on the grass and look up at the moon and kind of be in nature, and there was hammocks and
I loved that we had massages and colonics.
Yeah, there's the massages, the colonics. So I really loved that about it. And I love that there was different medicines. So you try
Yeah.
from medicines from different tribes. There's a different medicine each night. There was also a night on just the divine feminine. There was a night, and then there was basically like different themed nights with different medicines. So it gives like a really good broad scope. And I think the classroom part of it can be really useful. You know, if like
Yeah.
you're trying to work stuff out in your life, you're trying to work out where you're going to go next, it really is really focused on making sure you make some changes.
Definitely.
And that masculine structure can be really good when you're going into the unknown. Yeah,
So true.
that structure can actually be really useful.
So true. Yeah.
Whereas Soltara, on the other hand, is more like a
More like a retreat.
retreat. Yeah, it's more
Yeah,
like a retreat.
it's more relaxing.
Yeah, much
You
more
get a lot more
relaxing.
time during the day to chill and
Mhm.
integrate and just be. It's a much smaller group, so you're in a group of 20 as opposed to like 100. Yeah, it just felt like the healers, the facilitators, the people taking care of us at Soltara were more chilled. Felt like they were more feminine. There's a lot more women.
Mhm.
And we were right by the beach. I would say that the accommodation that we had at Soltara was significantly better.
Yeah, the location and the accommodation was amazing. Like
Yeah.
we're right by the beach,
Oh,
right
jungle,
right in the middle of the
luxury.
jungle. We had this beautiful, almost like apartment,
oh, it's so beautiful.
like treehouse apartment, looking over the
Yeah.
jungle. The decor was beautiful.
Yeah. Both places, the food was great.
Both places, the food was really, really good.
Yeah. So I would say like go to Rhythmia if you want like a real intensive, almost like a, plant medicine Groundhog Day.
Mm.
Whereas go to like a plant medicine boot camp or a plant medicine like conference. Do you know?
Mhm.
Or like go to Soltara if you want like a very relaxing plant medicine retreat.
Mhm.
So it's not as intense,
Mhm.
but you might want really intense. Like the ceremonies at Soltara were a lot more discreet, a lot more subtle. There was no big dancing and singing, no big sharing circles, which we kind of missed, but also in the same breath it's nice to just like be in your own process and
Mm.
it's very different.
Very
Very,
different.
very different.
Yeah, very different. So again, yeah, just I think feel into both, like look them both up, watch the videos that they both have, look at the curriculum that they have, and just feel what feels more resonant to you. I think that's probably the most useful thing you can do. Take what we said
Yeah.
to give you some type of rough framework just from our experience, and then go into each and work out what is it that you're wanting to experience, what feels right for you, and then just intuit which one
Yeah.
is going to be better.
Yeah.
But either way, you're not going to go wrong either way.
Totally.
They're like top of the league.
Yeah.
So we've got another question here. So this is from Carla. I see plant medicine popping up everywhere, but I feel a fear of what it might bring up. How can I feel safer? What I'm sensing is that you have a fear of what the ceremony might bring up for you, but at the same time you have an intention that you're seeing it everywhere, and you're obviously writing a question here, so I assume that it's something you want to move towards, but there is this fear of the unknown, of the uncertainty of it. And I think this is going to be a personal experience. It's like you've really got to be willing and committed to change, and if you're not at that point yet where it doesn't feel like you're willing to make that commitment, then maybe it's not right at this time for you. And in terms of safety, I just think research, make sure wherever you're going to go, you go on the basis of a recommendation, and also do your own research and feel into wherever you're going to go. Call whatever center you're going to go up to, call them up, speak to their team, see if you feel safe in their presence, see if they're able to hold space for you, and just really listen to yourself and work out if it feels safe for you. And like I say, do research on the place to make sure you're getting lots of good feedback from other people, and then decide if that's something that you want to want to follow up with. But it is a challenging journey to go on, and it most likely will bring the stuff up that you're most scared of it bringing up. So you really got to be prepared and ready to confront that if it does come up.
Yeah.
Do you
Well
have anything
said.
to add to that?
I think it just really helps if you're already on a path of surrendering and trusting your own path. You know, if you are listening to your calling, if you are paying attention to the signs that the universe is giving you, you know, all of this requires an element of trust and surrender. So I think the more you are in tune with yourself, in tune with your intuition and doing your spiritual practices, I think the more you're going to have a great experience, the more it's going to help you.
It reminds me of that Robert Moore quote I think I posted the other day, which was, if you are not willing to surrender, then you're not willing to die, and if you're not willing to die, you're not able to be reborn. So I guess the question under that for me is, are you willing to be reborn? And therefore you must be willing to surrender to your current circumstances, to whatever's got you to where you are in life. Like, are you willing to let go of your own control, which has got you to the point of wherever you are? But if you're listening to this and you're thinking of going on a plant medicine journey and you've got challenges in your life, are you willing to surrender to a greater intelligence in order to move beyond that? Are you willing to let go and to die to that version of yourself in order to be reborn?
Love that.
So, moving on. That was a great question, Carla. Thank you. The next one was from John. I'm feeling the call. What retreats do you recommend for a first timer? That would come down to, Saltara I think is great for a first timer. Rhythmia is great for a first timer.
Yeah.
But for people who are, further on the journey, there are other retreat centers that might be more relevant. Next question from Hannah is, I'm worried if it's ethical. How is it perceived by Westerners drinking indigenous sacred medicine?
Yeah, we had this conversation with Dan and Melissa, the founders of Soltara, because there is a conversation around, like, is it right for us to be drinking medicine, working with these indigenous tribes that have been using this as part of their culture for years and years and years and years. And, our experience every time we've brought this up has been that the healers want the medicine to travel. The medicine needs to travel because the world is sick. So they actually want it to get into the hands of the Western world. However, it's really important that we're not just taking it and doing it in some New York basement. We're not selling it in shops. You can't do that with ayahuasca. You can't do that with plant medicine. It is sacred, it is ceremonial, it is ritualistic, it is so precious and so holy that it needs to be done with indigenous healers. They need to be there, they need to be singing the ikros, they need to be pouring the medicine, serving the medicine, working with you. It's not something that you can just, as a Westerner, decide to go and do in your living room or at someone's place and start selling ayahuasca retreats to people. It's not, I feel really strongly that is not what it is. Absolutely not. So in order for us to, in order for the world to heal via plant medicine, what we actually need is more and more retreat centers opening up to bring in these healers that are, so generously offering to share the medicine with the world. So we need more and more retreat centers. This is great because we're now seeing more different countries around the world that are opening up for the legalization of plant medicine. So Washington and I think Oregon, maybe, I might have got that wrong, but have just made plant medicine legal. Or different plant medicines, I forget which specific ones. So I'm sure we're going to start seeing more and more centres open up. But, my personal opinion is that's how it should be conducted and no other way.
Thank you. Yeah, I think what you said is great. I asked Taito Juanito this same question. And he said a very similar thing. He said that the medicine here is to be shared with the world, and the world needs it. So the medicine is calling to spread its roots, metaphorically and literally, to go out into the world to create a greater healing so that we can come back into harmony with nature, with ourselves, with our communities. And that's what he said the medicine is here for. And I also asked him how he felt about Westerners serving the medicine, because that does actually happen at some of the centers, including Rhythmia. And he said that it's not necessarily about the person being indigenous, but that they have respect for the medicine, and that they have worked and learned from one of the lineages who have, these guys are like effectively scientists in their own culture, in their own way. They're like botanists. They understand how the jungle moves, the jungle works. They're deeply, deeply connected. So it's not so much about, from his perspective, about your race or where you're from in the world, but that you have gone through deep, sufficient training in order to be able to hold space, learning from these lineages who have been passing this medicine down and the way of working with it for years and years and years and years. So again, I think that what I was summarizing from that is just like, having a deep respect for the craft and having done all of the work themselves, and really, really honoring the cultures upon which this sacred medicine has came from and been gifted to us in the Western world at this time. Next question from Lewis. How do you know you're ready, and were you scared?
I personally believe that everyone that takes the medicine will have healing from it, whether they realize they're experiencing it in the ceremony or whether they go back to their life and they just feel different and something changes and shifts. I personally believe you can't go and take ayahuasca and not receive healing from it. Even if you feel like nothing happened in the ceremony, the medicine just being in your body, working through your life, will be healing for you. And some people go to drink ayahuasca because they've got really serious addictions, really serious trauma, really, big, deep stuff that they need to work through. And some people go because they're just curious and they want to experience their life to the absolute best possible potential, right? So you don't need to have like a big, massive trauma to go, but it is good to go with an intention of what you want to get from that experience.
And it's also good to note as well that a lot of people are carrying, some people are aware of the big T traumas, but there's also little t traumas which aren't any less significant to that individual, but they might be, might be not receiving the right kind of love from your mom or dad that you may not even be aware of, but you're unconscious, or you as a child internalized something at that point in time which you were unconscious of. So the medicine, you've got to be prepared that the medicine can also take you into places that you may not even be aware of in order to heal them.
Yeah.
We are a species that's come a long way from many wars, many tragedies, great depressions, and a lot of that can still be carried in our genes, in our lineage, and that can also be stuff that you're uncovering, which will ultimately lead you to living to your maximum capacity.
Absolutely.
The next question he asked was, were you scared?
I've never felt really scared, to be honest. I felt really ready. I just felt really ready for it. But I think that's because I don't know. I just got to be honest. I wasn't scared. But I think that's just me. I think it's normal to be scared. I was apprehensive and I had expectations. But I think if you need to kind of get used to surrendering in life, and then it'll be less scary. If you are not used to surrendering in life at all to anything, then it's going to feel terrifying. It's good to be already on a spiritual path where you are practicing the art of surrender, where you're not grasping to controlling every single part of your life, so that it's less scary. Okay, so I think that's all the main questions that we covered. This was an extra long episode, but we really wanted to just dive in and really get into the details and the nitty-gritty of what to expect if you are thinking about taking your first plant medicine journey. So
hope that was helpful.
Yeah, enjoy, guys, and do your own research. Definitely, before you go into your very first experience, do as much research as possible. Get on the internet, listen to other people's journeys, listen to other people's experiences,
watch the documentaries,
definitely
read the books.
Yeah, And we do actually have a code if you decide that Soltara is the best fit for you and you do want to have a retreat experience at Soltara. We have a code to get some money off your retreat, which is in the show notes. So make sure you check that out if Soltara calls to you.
That's it.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. See you next time.
Oh, I hope you absolutely loved that episode. I hope it has inspired you to dream bigger and to create that vision for your future. As always, if you want to join us and go deeper, come and join us inside the community. We have an incredible group of women chasing their dreams on this soul mission in life. We have workshops in there, we have workbooks, coaching calls with me, and of course, extra bonus content from all of the podcast guests. So until next time, hit subscribe, share this episode if you loved it, connect with me online, and yeah, I'll see you for another episode next week.